Bonjour à tous. Hi everyone. We're gonna start. We have a 10 minutes delay just to let the people from Paris the time to let them having the time to arrive. So thank you for all of you to be there today. We're gonna have the second official presentation of the project that our students are making for their second year of master. We're gonna follow the same order than last time. Just to remember to the jury, so you've seen them about 2 months ago, and you had the first intention that were presented. Now you're gonna see that each of these projects have made quite a bit of progress. We wait for you. We've asked them to present you where they are, what remains to be done. And so we wait from you to react and give feedbacks to what's going to be presented to you. You have to know that there's 5 weeks remaining till the final presentation. During these 2 months between now and the first time you've seen them, they didn't work fully on the project. It's about 1 month's work, actual work, because they have lectures, they have interventions, and so just to precise you the amount of work that has been done. Nevertheless, you're gonna see where they are and where they're going to. We're gonna do that in English, but feel free to give your questions and answer in the language you're more comfortable with. This is for you, but it's also for the students. Just to be sure that you have you're comfortable with to let them be comfortable with the answers. And each of the group will speak during about 20 minutes. And we're going to have for each about 10 minutes questions. I don't know if anybody has a question. Did you all, I'm talking to the people from the jury, do you all have the access to the Excel, just to, the formula, just in order to be able to fulfill it, either now or later on? So if everybody's, thank you, if everybody's ready, let's start. So help me welcome the PEAK project, please.
Il est où le machin? C'est toi qui l'as le machin ou pas? Parce qu'il est pas. Quel machin? Bah je sais pas, la pote, c'est celle-là? C'est ça? Là elle est pas branchée. Ah oui, non, elle est branchée. 3 fois le tour. Bien sûr, faut que tu l'aies.
Hi everyone, thank you for attending our presentation. We are the team behind PEAK, and we will show you our current progress. So PEAK is an arcade gliding game in a rough, low-tech world where gigantic beasts are co-opted by ancient crystal. Scavengers learn to survive by hiding, moving quickly through dangerous environments and gathering resources inherited from the past. You play as Dust, the windsurfer, and helped by a radio broadcasted by one of your friends, you will have to hunt those beasts while going down giant mountains on your windsurf in order to gather core crystals. Our original content are that we have a combination of a gliding game and a boss fighting game in order to have an intense experience. We also want a game to be juicy, easy to learn and to handle, as well as not frustrating for the player. And lastly, we have a strong artistic direction, including a lot of visual and sound effects. You already saw a glimpse, in the teaser, and you will discover more and more throughout the whole presentation. Regarding the vertical slice, you start by listening to the broadcast telling you that the monster you are looking for is close to your position. So you take your board and start to glide through sand. After going down some slope, you will finally see it up far away. And so you will go faster and faster to catch up with it. And using the other movement, you will be able to jump in the air and throw your board directly at it. Doing so multiple times will allow you to crush the corrupted crystal on its back. And while the beast fly away fully, you will be able to gather those crystals in order to improve your gears and take on more dangerous foes. We designed the whole experience on 3 main aspects, which are glide, hunt, and thrill. And we will now go over them one by one, but before that, here's gameplay footage.
Is this thing? Oh, shit. Hey there, suckers. This is DJ Typhoon talking, and guess what? We hacked into your network again. To all my friends out here, grab your boards, grab your weapons. The radars are down, which means it's time to party!
So now we're going to talk about one of our main pillars, which is the glide. The gliding mechanic, you have to control the board, which is easy to maneuver using simple controls, such as left and right to turn around, and up to accelerate. You must follow an intuitive path guided by the camera, making the whole experience a pleasant moment. During the game, you will have to jump and trick. In order to do so, you have to gather speed and jump using ramps. While in midair, you need to perform tricks and combos in order to, on landing, have a speed boost. But you have to be careful about your landing. If you land poorly, you'll crash. You have to also take care of the rocks on the road. You have to avoid them, because if you hit them at full speed, you'll crash also. After a crash, you'll simply respawn with no really punitive things. We also have the grind mechanics. During the slope, you will find some pipes and houses on which you can grind. Grindings allow you to gain height in order to do tricks and again have boost. But it's also sometimes a shortcut. Sorry for the grave quality. This is still a work in progress, but we have collectibles in the game. You need to gather them in order to enhance your board. There is many in the levels, and you should try to collect at least them all. During the production, we had a lot of sounds. For good feedbacks, all of our VFX comes with feedback sounds feedback, sorry. We have a very interactive sound design based mostly on speed. For instance, when you go fast, the wind is really, really high, and when you go slow, it's not that so high. We record some of the sound with Mark in the studios, which is our Foley artist and sound designer, as you can see on the picture. While you slide down the slope, you will be surrounded by a world which is made of jade crystals, red sand, in a low-tech, rusty and trashed environment. You'll see pipes and made houses, flags, things like that, which are all signs of an old civilization.
But in this environment, as we told you, you have to hunt something. Actually, Dust, the windsurfer, has to hunt in order to collect enough resources to upgrade his stuff. We decided to make to design a character with huge hands and feet, but skinny arms and legs. With this, we put the emphasis on the readability during animations, like movements and tricks. Sorry. But when we talk about the character, we are not talking about only the human being, but also the board. The board is basically the only thing that you will be able to upgrade in the game. So it has to be very this tribal and aggressive looking, but also thin and smooth. So it fits perfectly with the windsurfer. And we designed animations. We didn't hesitate to stretch out the 3D models. So we exaggerate movements and we produce this arcade feeling. Throughout the entire levels, the player will be contacted by a radio, and the radio is here to communicate the mood and the lore to the player. And with a punk, non-violent, passionate orator that you heard earlier, his name is Jacob Behrens. It's an American voice actor, a really good guy. Thanks to him, the player will learn many things about the game's background and the creature that is tracking. Now you're all here for one thing, right? And we know it. You're here to see the boss. We spent several days to find the most impressive and majestuous looking. And we finally ended up with something like this. This creature directly comes from nature. And you can feel this organic and aggressive looking when you see it, right? And with aerodynamism and gigantism sensation. We were mainly inspired, as you guessed it, I think, by manta rays living in the seas, or airplanes, too. Yeah, it's up to you. And what we found interesting is that this big contrast between those two protagonists. On one side, we have this big, aggressive-looking one flying away from the little one. The very rough, metallic character chasing the organic. To detail more about the boss system from a technical point of view, we made this system of the boss following a spline that allow us as designers to tweak his path and make it more consistent for the player. We also have this checkpoint system in which, that allow us to modify the boss behavior. Like, for example, if the player is too slow and too far away from the boss will slow down too, so the player will be able to catch up. And once we are behind it, the big question is, how do we actually attack the boss? Well, we thought about mechanics like the player casting some spells and launching fireballs, but that wasn't something that we wanted at all. So in our game, you will be able to beat the boss by launching your board directly at it. Every tricks you make allow you to launch your board around you, and you will have to hit the boss in order to collect what you came for. Here is a first prototype of what we have right now concerning this mechanic. And this is, of course, a work in progress, as you can see. Now, to detail more about the boss, it has two phases. One where it looks like this, and it's basically just flying away from you. And after a few hits, its tail comes out of its body. And then it unlocks new interactions, like now the boss can attack directly the player, so you will have to dodge it. And the other interesting interaction is that the player can now go on the boss and grind directly on it. This is, of course, allowed by level design. We made situations in which the player can take enough speed, jump, and aim for the tail in order to grind on it and damage the boss. Now, that was many gameplay features that we showed you for now.
And now we're going to be speaking about our last pillar, which is the thrill. By now, you may be wondering, how will it look like? How will it sound in the final game? So to speak, we're speaking about the icing on the cake. We're thinking about gigantism and verticality. Those are two huge concepts for our production. The character is very small compared to the environment and compared to the monster. And we're really attached to the feeling of vertigo. So we really make these high jumps with great heights. And we want the free-falling feeling as well. For the feedback, we are heavily working on visual effects. So all our visual effects are dynamic. Like you can see here the wind particles, the blur and the screen shake as well. Here on the grind, you have some particles as well. It's another example. All these visual effects will be accentuated by sound effects. We're thinking about controller vibration as well. And as you saw earlier, the crashing, we have a ragdoll feature, and these particles that are already with sound effects on the demo you saw at the beginning. Speaking of gigantism and verticality, we're really trying to recreate that in terms of sound. Peak is a loud game. Will it be loud all the time? I think so. But how we will make to keep that dynamic interesting? That's where the verticality goes in. We want to have a dynamic mixing, so we're thinking about sidechain compression with Wise, ducking, and also filtering over time, like you heard with the music when the player is in the air. So the mix will be moving all the time, going up and down, and that's our verticality. We also have an adaptive music feature, and this is when the player is grinding. When the player is grinding, we'll have a percussive export of the music, so there will be just percussions, and we really want to accentuate this gameplay feature because it's the finisher of the boss. So I think if we have to have adaptive music on the game, that's the moment where we have to have it. Finally, Peak is a collaborative soundtrack. For the moment, we only have internal production songs, but we already contacted 6 different composers. I gave them music directions, and we're really excited to have the music and have the playlist. I will show you another gameplay example with another music we made of the game. As for the camera, we'll have different camera angles. We're really trying to focus on the different aspects of the game. So when the player is making tricks, we really want the camera to be close to the player to see those animations that we're really proud of. And when the boss is there, we want the camera to show us a little bit the boss. So we're really working hard on these camera angles, and there'll probably be cutscenes as well. We're working on those as well. So the level design we have is finite. So when the player finish the level, if he didn't beaten up the creature enough, he will have to retry the level. So that's our defeat situation. So the creature flies away, and you have to retry and come back later. But you will have learned some resource. You will have earned some resource. Sorry. For the victory situations, the player gets the core. So he wants the level is over, cutscene, and everyone's happy. For the final game, we're thinking of having resource to improve your board. But Victor will talk to you about that in the production aspect of the game.
The full game experience will roughly take you 12 hours to finish, and it will be built around 8 different biomes. Each one having one narrative arc, several challenges, and at the end, one boss fight. It will be a solo experience, playable on PC, Xbox One, and PS4. And the premium experience will allow you to go through the main, the main experience, sorry, where you will be able to progress through biomes, collect resources, I will tell you, and then improve your board and customize your character and tricks to tackle on new foes and fight more difficult areas. You will also be able to unlock cosmetics by completing special feats. Cosmetic will be things like skin for your character, your board, or your sail, or alternative special VFX and tricks. In addition to the premium game, you will be able to buy DLC including new areas in order to unlock new tricks and tackle on new bosses, as well as finding new cosmetic items. And you will be able to buy directly in-game cosmetics to showcase to your community, for example, on Twitch, or to just because you like it. In terms of progress, we are really good for the glide and tricks. As you can see, we are nearly done. Regarding the rest of the game, we might not be able to add everything we wanted for the boss fight and the cutscene, but everything else will be done at the end of the project. You can already come and see us in a box if you want to try the prototype we currently have. Sorry. Thank you for your attention, and so as I say, come and see us.
Thank you. Do you have first questions?
Hello, I'm Fred. I'm a level designer on Mario Plus Rabbids. I totally like the proposition of your game. I really love the arcade feeling of this proposal, but I think it misses some impact. It misses some visual dynamism and also audio dynamism. I'm sure you have a lot of ways to increase all of this. What are your next steps about this?
Je ne sais pas si le micro derrière marche.
Thank you for your question and the feedbacks. Yeah, we're working really hard on it. We're actually tweaking a lot of visual effects that you saw in the presentation and that we have in the current prototype. And we're also thinking about adding more impact on really focused moments, like on the landing phase, extra. So we're working on new VFX and improve the VFX we have now.
And for the audio, I talked about dynamic mixing. In the time we made the prototype you saw, the only thing there is the filtering in the music. So there's no section compression at all. There's nothing of what I spoke about. It's what we're going to do next. So we're trying to do that.
Next question.
Hi, I'm Marshall, co-founder of mobile studio OBB. I just want to reinforce the fact that I felt the sense of speed was lacking in a way, and that can be done in with some kind of easy tricks. And if you look at games like Outrun, you know, they were able to convey a super good sense of speed with like very low tech. So I think it's a good reference to look at. But my question was more on why are we chasing this creature and this boss? And I think it lacks a sense of purpose and hostility from that beast, because right now, from what we've seen, it's more we get the feeling that we're actually attacking this creature that's done nothing bad to us. So I wanted to know what were your next steps in terms of players' objective and to convey a sense of danger and hostility from that creature.
In the current prototype, the boss is only we can only chase it. One of our goals is to make it, maybe if we have the time, attack the player, like by making rocks fall or something like this. Narratively speaking, you're chasing the boss because it has a very precious resource on it that you need to enhance your board. And there is a more complex scenario we didn't say here, but that's really for another time, I think.
And just to get a more accurate feedback, I think, you know, if you're chasing it for resources, you know, it's you're the danger and he's a victim of your. So if you, I think it can be done. Like, I think a very narrative. If you take the game Temple Run, for example, which is a bit different of what you do, but you start the game, you know. Every time you start the game, there is an intro with like monsters chasing you, and then these monsters they disappear. You don't hear about them anymore. But you know, just beginning the game with some sense of, oh, this guy is a bad guy, and I need to do something. Otherwise, it's gonna be bad for me or my tribe or whatever you can come up with. But to really, you know, ground the game into some kind of you know, real dangerous objective, and I'm not like I'm not violenting this poor creature.
Want to reply to that, or?
Hello, David Bowman, Darewise Entertainment. This is an observation about the presentation as a whole, not the product, and it's something I want like everybody to understand when they do their presentations. Never apologize. When you do a presentation, don't say I'm sorry, or oh, this is just a work in progress, or you know, don't put that in your presentation. Don't make that part of your delivery. If your audience didn't notice it, you don't need to point it out. If they noticed it, apologizing doesn't change anything. And if you have something that is a work in progress and you want to make sure it's they know it's a work in progress, put work in progress somewhere on your slide. But in general, we know the context of your presentation. We know right now you're not done. So you don't need to apologize that you're not done. So keep that out of your language, but otherwise, good, you know, good solid presentation.
Thank you.
Hi, Nicolas from Azobo Studio, game designer. Thank you for the presentation. There are good stuff in your work. It's pretty cool. The radio is a cool thing. Just think about the beast. It's your main focus. It's a main objective. I think you lose the beast too many times during your progression. So you may need think about way to always know where the beast here during your descent. Maybe using some colors on screen around, you know, to know that the beast is on the right, on the left, above, on the ground. Always have something. I know that you have shadows for the beast, but many probably it's too close. Many probably if the beast is too high, you have nothing. So yeah, maybe having some stuff, and the sound must be more present for the beast. You know, the beast is coming closer. The beast is so. But good stuff.
Do you want to add something to that, or no? We still have a few minutes for. So next question.
Hi, hello, Sandrine from Asmodee Digital. I have a question about the length of the game itself. You have a loop of progress, collect and improve, and I was wondering how it repeats. I have a feeling that I understood it's basically related to finding a beast and collect, and then what happened? Is it something that you repeat? How did it change from a beast to another? How many times I do that until I reach the end of the game and I need to put money in it to play more? This kind of stuff. I just was some question about that.
Actually, yeah, that's a main gameplay cycle, but every bosses will be different, and there will be also different challenges like obstacle courses or time trial, and you will be able to find gems that will change your tricks, and every tricks will be as visual, so the board will not make the main pattern, but also we also serve different purpose for your attack. And so you can imagine having tricks with narrow paths, but doing more damage, and one with a larger path, but doing less damage. For example, at the beginning, you can use easier tricks, but it will take you more time to beat bosses. And as you go on, you will be able to find tricks that switch your playstyle and that work with the beast you are currently facing. And so you will be able to try until you find a combination of skills and stats that please you and work for what you are currently facing.
And I was also wondering about the notion of repetition, because you're gonna keep on fighting beasts, and do you want to make the player to play again against the same beast because he gains some stuff and he's improving his skills and his ability, or is there a bigger narrative and he reached a point related to the narrative, and I don't know, maybe I have no idea, it's your game, but I don't know, the beast reveals something that you didn't know and it kind of change your destination or your goal, and it's just this notion of repetition of beings. What I gain in the narrative, should I just repeat, or should I go somewhere, or don't know if I'm clear. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I don't think we thought a lot about repeating the same beast once you beat it. So thank you for that. We think about it. The main idea is that you can ride the slope many times with collectibles. The level design will have different paths. You can explore. You can learn the level design before attacking the beast. And once you beaten the beast, you can move on to another slope, learn a new slope, a different environment, maybe different mechanics, collect collectibles to improve yourself, the board, and tackle a new beast, and so on, with each new beast, the 8 we have.
We're gonna stop now. Oh, okay. Just, okay.
Just a very quick observation. This reminds me of Guitar Hero in its cycle, in that there's a skill that you're trying to learn, and then when you master the skill, you're going to change the challenge to a new challenge. So take a look at that product, understand what works with it and what doesn't, and then use that as a model, I think, if you're going to parallel something.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Please help me thank the PIC project and PIC team. And let's welcome the ECHO project, please. as it was said during the presentation, well, just at the beginning, if you have further questions, don't hesitate to go visit the place where they are on the first level at their boxes. We will have sometimes during the lunch break for that. So here is the ECHO team.
C'est tout en haut. La petite truc là, ici. Du coup, télécommande.
Good morning and welcome to the presentation of our game ECHO. ECHO is a first-person 3D horror game in which you have to use sounds to reveal the environment around you. You have to reveal this environment to escape monsters called umbras that are chasing you in the levels. You are ECHO, a member of a humanoid species called Alcars. Alcar used to be at war against the Umbras, another species on this planet, but they were quickly defeated and a small group of Alcars were forced to retreat underground. At the time of the game, it's been 50 years since the war, and ECHO is exiled to the surface by his people to die alone. If he wants to survive, ECHO will have to find a way to drive out Umbras from the surface. In terms of what we want the player to experience in our game, we want him to face the unknown with dread and apprehension. A small part of his field of vision is visible. There will always be darkness around him. We want the player to feel like he's trespassing, like he doesn't belong in this world. ECHO used to belong on the surface, but now with the Umbra's presence, it's hostile to him. We want the player to experience another way to perceive the world. We want him to discover his surroundings using only sounds. These three experiences will lead to a feeling of horror in the player. More specifically, we want him to feel the fear of change and transformation and the fear of identity loss, that through change he may lose what makes him himself. In terms of what the gameplay is and what the player will actually do inside the game. As I was shown before, our main mechanic is echolocation, of course. By walking, the player makes footsteps, and these footsteps create echoes. These echoes will reveal the environment it touches. The echoes range depends on the player's speed, and the player can have a lot of influence on the speed. He can go slowly, walk normally, he can also run, and he can decide to crawl if he has to go through tight spaces. The reveal environment will stay visible for a small while on the screen before disappearing. We want the player to feel like the darkness is closing in on him. A small area around the player will stay visible. It's to symbolize ECHO's breathing and the sound it creates. This area can disappear if the player holds the right and left bumper at the same time to hold his breath for a short while. It can be used to escape an umbra that's really nearby, and the player has to wait for him to pass in darkness. If the player is next to a metallic material, he can use the scouting ability by holding the left trigger. Echo will then feel the vibration of this material and reveal it to the player, as well as anything that comes into contact with this material. This can be used to see ahead and see if there is potential monsters on the way. In terms of level design, we're going to use what we call environmental sounds. These are all the sounds that are not produced by the player. So, as you can see, there is an audio-visual feedback, but this sound doesn't reveal the environment and it doesn't reveal the source of the sounds. This can create a certain tension in the player who doesn't know what makes these sounds. We also want to use mucus, which is a material that slows down the player when he steps on it, which can be quite stressful if he's trying to escape from an umbra.
Now, about the umbras, they produce decoy sounds. So this serves to maintain the uncertainty in the player's head about what he or she is hearing, because these sounds, for example, the sound of droplets, could be an environmental sound, but they could be as well the sound produced by a monster. So this maintains this uncertainty. The sounds, the echoes produced by the player, if a monster is touched by an echo, which means if an umbra hears the player, then their behavior will change because they will locate or know that the player is here somewhere because they are sensitive, to sounds. And if an umbra enters in contact, catches the player, then the player is killed immediately. We are going to show you a short video showing the different states the monsters, the umbras can be in, and the way the music changes depending on these states. About the game structure now. The full game would have a total of 7 levels. For our vertical slice, we will showcase a part of the first level in the game. Each level is divided into 2 parts. The first one is a part that is outside the domes, the dark domes being created by the monsters, the umbras, so that they can be in a safe space, in a safe place. They are comfortable with, and so these phases are mainly about exploration, and they serve as a way to help the player breathe a little, calm down after the high stress created by the other phases that are the horror phases inside of these domes. So the parts outside of the dome are about 30% of each level, and the parts inside the domes are about 70% of each level. And in these parts, this is where the main horror is, because the players will have to avoid the umbras, and find a way to deactivate the beacons that are generating these dark domes. And our vertical slice will showcase first the transition between the outside and the inside of the dome rapidly, and then most of the first dome in the game. In the vertical slice, we have we will first show this cutscene where the players enter the dome, where then we will immerse progressively the player and build up the tension up until a first peak. And then after this first peak, when the tension decreases a little, we'll introduce the first umbra so that we have a second peak of tension. And then the player, after a second decrease of tension, will have several situations where they will have to avoid an umbra up until the final chase sequence for the final peak of tension, and it all ends up with a cliffhanger so that we stay on this state of tension.
So we want to fear the player, and we want to build an oppressive atmosphere in this game. To do this, we based our gameplay experience on different types of sensations: stress, oppression, disgust, uncertainty, disorientation, apprehension, and rejection. This is why the graphics and the rendering of the game were created to be consistent with this vision. As well as making the player feel the desired emotion at the right time. So to make the player feel such emotions, we use several methods. For example, we cut off his field of vision with echolocation. This simple fact creates oppression, uncertainty, but also a feeling of stress, because if you don't move, you are surrounded by the dark, and we hide some special information to him. We pay a great attention to our choices of colors and lights, because they determine the atmosphere of the created world. Currently, the Alcar's ruins of our vertical slice is based on a monochrome of dark blue, which gives a cold and abandoned side on this place. But we also add some variation in the colors through different places you will see and be present in the vertical slice, such as sewers, as we can see here, which are in much more greenish shades, reinforcing this moldy side of this place. The architecture of the dome will be based on ancient Alcar's ruins, on which the umbras have superimposed their habitats through the dark dome and through mucus. So what is mucus? Mucus is a kind of organic waste produced by umbras that allows them to recreate their natural habitats. It allows to indicate the umbra's presence in this place without necessarily showing them to the player. We want to evolve this mucus and make it take up more and more space in the environment as we move deeper into the dome, in order to increase the feeling of entering an unknown, strange and hostile territory. The mucus will also seems to be alive and will moves in the environment, reinforcing this unpleasant feeling of disgust that we seek for the player. So the environment of the dome will be quite narrow, based on corridors, but also with some variation through larger rooms and other places, as the sewers we have discussed earlier. We want to introduce the player to the Alcar's culture and the pervasion of it by the umbras. That's why, by navigating through the dome, the player will discover places and methods of life of the old cars through the architecture, but also through environmental narration, such as frescoes, corpses, statues, and everyday objects. Finally, we also want to introduce constant stress through scripted events, such as a rockfall triggering when the player passes.
About the alcars, they are a species that emits ultrasounds while breathing to perceive the world through echolocation, which means through sound reverberation. We wanted to give them an appearance quite fragile and young to put forward the need to survive we wanted to emphasize. And because of this trait, the sound is hold a big place, a big part of their culture, identity, and sense of selves. For the umbras, they are species that can absorb and re-emitting sounds. For example, an umbra can absorb sounds created by rats in his environment and re-emitting them a few moments later. Ultrasounds are toxic to them, so they cannot stand the presence of alcars in the surface of the planet, and thus try to kill those around them to be able to live well. We wanted them to be creepy, but in a ghost way, which means that they will be only visible from a certain distance, like ghosts in a horror movie with ghosts could do it. That's why we decided to focus a lot on their silhouettes. They must be emaciated, insectile, and sharp to show that they are a source of danger.
For the sound design, we want to put a strong emphasis on the character movements and body sounds to make him feel alive and real, so the player can self-identify and feel more intense sensations. There's work still to be done on the spatialization to increase immersion, notably using Auro 3D and Wise Reflect for a better spatial representation, and different reverb types to push claustrophobia at times or to push it backwards. And we want to play with the player's mind to generate tension. So umbras can re-emit sounds from everyday things like animals, etc., which make them unpredictable. We will use scripted environmental events to generate insecurity and stress, such as rock falls and things like that. And we want to keep high dynamics through the game to ensure a large tension range on which we can play. And here's a short video showcasing our vertical slice ending. It's a chase sequence taking place in the sewers. Thanks for attending our presentation, and we are curious to have your feedback. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. First questions? Question.
Your core premise is that I, the player, can see the world through the presence of sounds reflecting off of surfaces. So it's true for my movement. Is this also true for the Umbra's movement? So when an Umbra makes sound, does it illuminate the area around it?
So any sounds that are not produced by the player are what we call environmental sounds, and they will only have a feedback like we showed earlier. So it will not reveal the environment. So the player will see a visual feedback, oh, there is a sound here, and they can hear what type of sound it is, but they won't know if, for example, it's really a rat making a sound, or it's a monster recreating the sound of a rat. For some sound, for example, like a water droplet, we can use the type of sound. The player can say, okay, it's a water droplet I hear, and if he sees the sound moving in the environment, he can think that's not right, and he can think maybe it's a monster there. So that's what we want to use to create this uncertainty.
Very simple question. Maybe I didn't follow, but what happens outside the dark dome?
Outside the dark domes, there is more open environment than inside the dark dome, where it's more like corridors. And there you can explore the surface. It's an exploration phase, in fact. And you will have, for example, to find a way to open a door, to open a passage toward the dark dome. And the idea is to use these phases to create a drop in tension inside the player. So once he finishes a dark phase in the dark dome, he will really come out and feel liberated to be inside this safe space. And then further in the game, we can use this feeling of safe spaces to subvert it and insert Umbras inside these spaces. Because at the start, there will not be any monsters there, because they live in the domes. And when you start to really destroy these domes, the Umbras will try to fight back, and we try to invade your safe space. So we want to use this feeling of peace and liberation to break it, in fact.
So I can see outside the dome. I don't need to make sounds to see the environment. And another thing, maybe it's the space where you need to put the narration if there is no real gameplay, or I don't know, puzzles, or at least no horror gameplay. But yeah.
You still need to create sounds to work to see outside, but you have a large range compared to inside the dome, because you're an Alcar, and Alcar only see through echolocation. It's not because you are inside the dome that you are sonantly blind, so it's how they always perceive the world. But outside the dome, you have a very large range, so it's to emphasize exploration rather than fear. And yes, it's not a horror gameplay, and this is where we want to introduce real narrative elements. For example, you can meet other Alcars that have been exiled as well, and it's where you can really have a lot of more context than inside the dark dome, we think.
Another question? Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation. I have a question about the tools the player will have to resolve the different level design situation. We saw that we can connect with the metal to see like some structure. I think it's really interesting because it will help you in your level design create new situations. But apart from that, do you have other plans to make the player feel smarter, like having choices where the choices are actually interesting and make me feel smart, and not just, okay, here I wait, the sun is out, okay, I can move forward?
We asked ourselves at the beginning of the project how much power we wanted to give to the player. If he wanted to like introduce more infiltration elements, give the tools to the player to understand the behavior of the Umbras and have a way to use it to win. But we decided to leave the player very defenseless. But we think that we can empower the player as the game goes on, because in the first dome he doesn't know what's going on, he doesn't know the monsters, but as he's destroying more and more domes, it would be strange to still be powerless. The player will feel empowered, and then we can introduce mechanics like maybe we can collect rocks to throw them and distract the Umbras with other sounds. So we had a list of mechanics like this that we will not showcase in the vertical slice because we think it's not original enough. It's much more interesting to use the scouting, for example. But that's something that we're really thinking on the complete game, at least.
Yes.
Just to react to what you were talking about, so basically your learning curve as a player to understand the world and how it works through sound is going to be through the domes. So basically the first dome you understand one type of sound and you have a simple objectives, and it goes on through the domes, if I understand correctly. Yes?
The idea is that, the more he goes through domes, the more he understands the Umbras, but also the more the Umbras know that someone is destroying their society. So it will be more and more difficult as he goes on, and as he goes toward the heart of the Umbras, the heart of their civilization. And we thought about maybe for the last dome it would be the sort of capital city, and it can be crawling with Umbras, and what we didn't really talk about in this presentation is the narrative and what we want to convey with it. The idea is that, as we said, Alcars are producing ultrasounds, and Umbras can't bear ultrasound. It's like radiation to them. So they have this biological incompatibility, and we want to talk about that, and maybe inside the game, as you go on, you can find a way to communicate with the species that are not really trying to kill you because they are monsters or hate you, but because they feel oppressed by your presence, and they feel like they're in danger. So maybe when you see this last dome, which is the home of the children, the home of the elderly, of the Umbras, it will be like the relation of power will be inversed. You are in power, they are weak, and you have to be merciful and find a way, a common ground between you.
Reaction to that or other questions? We still have a few minutes. No? Okay. Sure.
The color palette that you were showing with the blues and then the greens, I like the idea. It tends to be monochrome. Are there moments where different colors are used, or do you have, what's your intention with being able to expand that palette for moments? Because I know the ambiance you want is monochromatic, but it feels like as I'm playing the game, there should be definitely uses of color to just brighten the environment for contextual purposes. What do you plan on doing there?
So thanks for the question. Actually, we work colors to give intentions and ambience on places and rooms and things like that. But as we say earlier, we want to create some special places, like maybe a cultural places of Alcars, such as a big tree which is embodies something for them, and so we want to use colors also to represent this kind of feelings and the importance of certain elements in the environment, and we also use lights to, in not the normal way, because there is no source of light in this place, because they are all blinds. But we use lights to gives emotions and gives atmosphere on every place. So we want to not use always the dark blue monochrome, but sequence it through different type of colors, depending on in which place we are in.
Thank you. Is there a last question? Okay, so let's thank once again the ECHO project team. And welcome the team of Tales of Puna.
On attend que les lumières s'éteignent ou pas?
Hi, welcome to be here, and thank you for being here, and welcome to our presentation of our student project. We are the team behind Tales of Puna, and we're glad to show you what our game looks like currently. Tales of Puna is a 2D adventure game which targets consumer of narrative experience. It's a game playable on mobile and tablet using a freemium episodic distribution model. The concept of our game can be summarized in three main ideas, in fact. First, we want to create a mysterious world that player can explore and discover. We want player to find and study fantastic creatures, to gather information and feel a bestiary without hurting these animals. Third, we want to provide a narrative experience where player can feel they are useful and they help to solve a deep mystery in Puna. Speaking about Puna, the first thing you need to know is Puna is a lost world, which means it's a small area completely isolated and hidden from the outside world. This isolation allowed Puna society to develop its own way. The most striking specificity of Puna is its fantastic fauna. There is a wide variety of uncommon creatures with different shape, size, and abilities. Some creatures in Puna are huge and dangerous, when others are tiny, cute, and can be very useful. This diversity is the reason why people in Puna understood it was their very interest to cooperate with these creatures. They learned to live peacefully and harmoniously, respecting their needs and their freedom without trying to own them. In fact, people in Puna developed their own culture, their own legends, and their own sense of beauty, deeply impacted by their unique bond with these fantastic creatures. But let's talk about the artistic side of our project.
Yes, we have two main goals we want to achieve for the player. We want first him to feel really in touch with nature, and we want him to feel a sense of awe when discovering new landscapes. That's why image composition in our game is really important to make the discovering of the landscape a really intense moment. Sound design is important as well in order to immerse the player in the naturalist atmosphere we want to create. There are a lot of things to discover in this world. We talked about the landscape, the new spaces, and there is also the unknown culture, the Poinan culture. In order to create this culture, we took inspiration from Asian culture, Western Europe culture, and Scandinavian culture. And music is also a big part in this feeling of discovery, because it is really minimalist in its aesthetic and begins with very few instruments. And as the player explores the world, the music unfolds itself really slowly. And at some phases in the game, the music is really connected to the level design, and the player will be able to explore a forest and explore the music as well.
Now that you know about the game world, let's talk about what happens in it. The game starts with bad news. Creatures started to act crazy. They start to fall sick and to be in pain. And the bond between creatures and people of Puna is affected and weakened. And unable to find the origin of this evil, the Council of Puna decided to do something they never did before. They request help from the outside world. This is where you come in as a player. In Tales of Puna, you play as Jo, an ethologist from the outside world. Jo she knows a lot about creatures. She's very curious and passionate about them. So when she gets a letter inviting her to a part of the world she's never heard of to help investigate into mysteries involving fantastic creatures, well, you can imagine she's very excited about discovering a world and study beasts and record everything in her bestiary. Jo is a scholar. She has a scientific and a curious mind, and she combines that with the sensitivity of a healer, which means she's there to study and help the beasts. She's not there to engage into any kind of conflict with them. We also want to introduce you to the Griffin. She's the first creature you will encounter and help when you arrive in Puna. The Griffin will accompany you in your adventures and will take an important part in the game through the narrative. How do you interact with Puna's world as a player? To introduce you to the mechanics, let's review what we intend for our vertical slice. The vertical slice takes place during the first chapter of the story, and it starts with a cutscene in which you learn that Jo received a letter, an anonymous letter, with information about how to get to Puna. After some minutes of gameplay, which won't be in the vertical slice, Jo finally discovers the entrance to Puna, and she discovers Puna, as you saw in the video at the beginning of the presentation. Tales of Puna is a 2D game, and you discover the world in layers. In open spaces like this, you tap on path, which lead you to the next layer. And here you discover an old lady. She's standing close to an empty nest in a tree. Tales of Puna features a number of dialogues which give you information about the world, about other people of Puna, about creatures, and sometimes they get you on a quest. And here, the old lady tells you about 2 griffins that are missing, and they didn't get back to the nest, and this is unusual at this time of day. So you ask her if you can have a closer look at the nest to gather some first information about the griffins, because you don't know anything about those creatures. And the first thing you see is a blue feather. And the lady also tells you that the griffins usually play in the forest near the village, so you decide to head there to have a look. On the edge of the woods, you see in the distance a blue feather, so okay, the griffins probably went there. When you get to the feather, you see a hole in a tree. You take a closer look at the tree, and you find some information and some evidence that a griffin, at least one griffin, visited the hole. But you also find some leftovers of food that clearly a griffin wouldn't eat. So you start thinking, okay, maybe this is a burrow of another creature, and maybe the griffin visited the burrow and maybe it disturbed the creature and they got into a fight. As you progress, the suppositions you make are recorded in a journal. The left page of the journal recounts the events of the chapter and reminds you what situation you are currently investigating. And on the right page, you can see all the suppositions you make, and they are updated as you find more information. They can, for example, be crossed out if you contradict them, or they can be circled if you validate them. But you've seen other feathers near the burrow, and you followed the trail to see where the griffin went afterwards. And you stumble upon marks of a fight on the floor. And as you take a closer look at the fight, you gather more information and make more suppositions. And you think, okay, there was at least another animal than the griffins involved in the fight. But there are no signs of the griffins, and the feathers stop there. But you spot blood. So you follow this trail, as it's surely it's the blood of a creature involved in the fight. This shows the other way to navigate in Puna, when you're not following path, but following leads and items, tracking items. There you're following the blood. And this trail leads you to the body of a griffin. Sadly, this one didn't make it. This shows another feature of our game, the bestiary. In the bestiary, everything you gather, all the information about the beast you gather is recorded with drawings and entries. When you gather information either by talking to someone or by analyzing a beast or the environment, it is automatically added to the bestiary. And in Puna, there are many, many beasts to find before completing your bestiary. So with all the information you have now, you think, okay, probably the other griffin got his wing broken during the fight because he didn't fly away. And he probably went into the burrow after the fight, not before. And if he's there and hiding and not dead, he's probably in a lot of pain. So you decide to go back there. When you get there, you meet an old man. The old man starts telling you that he was looking for you and so, but you don't have time for this. You tell him about the griffin hiding in the burrow who needs help. So the man understands, and he tells you that to make him come out, you should try and reproduce the sound of a griffin's beak. And this is the last main feature of our game. You will regularly be presented with mini-games of various types. This one is a rhythm mini-game that you need to tap on the screen to make big sounds and until the griffin comes out. Once you perform the mini-game, the griffin comes out, you take him into your arms and he's shaking and he looks hurt. But you resume your talk with the old man, and he tells you he's your host, he's the one who sent you the letter. And he's glad that you accepted his invitation to Puna and that you managed to get there. And seeing your concern for the griffin, is convinced he made the right choice. You will be able to help him solve Puna's mysteries. But he's worried because there are no violent creatures in this part of the forest. So this means something's definitely wrong. And he asks you if maybe you could help him and investigate and try to find which creature attacked the griffins and maybe why. So this is where our vertical slice will end, but if you were to continue playing, you would find out that a creature which is usually adorable when completely berserk and attack the griffin. and that the reason why she got berserk was that she accidentally inhaled some poisonous gas coming from weird plants growing in the ruins in another part of the forest. But as the host will tell you, this is weird because those plants are not supposed to be there. So this means something happened to the silviculture, a totem beast responsible for planting seeds in the region. And at the end of the chapter, you would figure out that the silviculture was attacked and that one of his young was taken. But who would do that, breaking the symbiosis between humans and creatures? And as you stand there, pondering about that with the host, huge rock birds fly over the village, making the mountains tremble and the trees bend. And as you watch them fly away in the distance, you see one of them drop something. And according to the host, this does not mean anything good. And as you set out with the host and the griffin, which definitely got attached to you, you wonder about what exciting adventures await in the next region. We want to release our game episodically, each episode being a chapter of the story. And each chapter takes place in a particular region of Puna with a totem beast to help. As the game progresses, you learn more and more about the origin of the evil threatening Puna's balance. You learn that you're not the first person to come from the outside world to Puna. A few months before, a man called Magnus actually discovered Puna and met the members of an ancient cult. Magnus can be considered the dark reflection of Jo if her values slowly got corrupted. And in the last chapters, it's not only about helping creatures, it's about finding and stopping Magnus. And in the last chapters, when you finally stop him, you learn about his motivation and you realize he's not such an evil guy. But now that he knows so much about Puna, the council decide that they can't let him leave and go back to the outside world. We want to attract narrative gamers, so we decided to make an episodic freemium game with a free first episode. We think that one of the things attractive about games like Life is Strange or The Wolf Among Us on mobile is the fact that you can immerse yourself in the first chapter of the story for free. We want our players to dive into the fantastic world we're creating, and we want them to want to stay and want more. We also think that an episodic model is good because of the price. We think it's really hard to sell a mobile game for 15 euros or more. But if you cut it into chapters and sell it for $2.99, it's more okay. So we intend to create a 5 to 6 hour experience and to cut it into about 8 episodes. For our production, we think we can finish the first chapter in 3 months, and by then we will have all the tools ready to ship an episode every 2 months. About the budget, the salary of the employees and the additional cost, we made a first budget estimation to 650,000 euros. So that's it. Thank you for your attention, and please feel free to ask questions and give us as many feedback as you can. And please welcome the whole team.
So, first question.
Thank you for the presentation. So this was really cool. The universe is very cool, but on the design side, guys, I was a bit disappointed because what you showed us mainly was for me more like a storyboard. Like we go there and then I suspect that it's this because Y, and I know X about the world. So it's a lot of info that I assume the character will know or local folks will know. But as a player, a newcomer in your world, I can't decipher what a feather, a blue feather in this area would mean, or this kind of blood here. So this is first, this is something maybe that is like create a dissonance maybe. And then at the end you said, okay, and so the last feature we have are like mini games. So show me the mini games actually. I want to see design. Design is inputs, challenges, obstacles, interface. And I just see like your introduction cutscene. That's a bit disappointing.
Yeah, thank you. We totally understand that. The thing is, we have been exploring some ideas about making an investigation game, but recently we find out that it didn't fit our intentions. So we are going back to a more narrative experience, and we are reintroducing minigames. That's why this one is not yet designed. So yeah, that's the reason why it's really narrative, and we are still figuring out the gameplay. We decided to try this with not a lot of interactions, but more narrative, and we are going to playtest this and see if it's interesting for the target we are targeting.
Other reactions or questions?
This is less about the product and more about the team. You started with, again, impressive universe and the art style. I think that is all coming together quite well, but it seems like you're struggling with the game. And can you talk just a little bit so that the rest of the other teams can hear and we can understand, like, what are you struggling with right now that's caused this to be true? Like, yeah, what are you struggling with right now?
Well, as Jonas said earlier, we tried to make an investigation game. So we designed some mechanics we thought would be cool. And as we tried to do some cool level design, we found out it was difficult to design an investigation game with these mechanics to allow the player to play with the clue we gave him. And so we struggle at this moment, and we try to find a solution to adapt our design. And we get some other problem because some members of the team need some elements of the level design to progress in our production. And so we took a moment to think about it, and we realized our strength was maybe at first our universe and the story more than any mechanical elements and the investigation aspect. So we decided to make a game more focused on these narrative elements, and we throw the mechanism we designed, and that's why we are quite late now.
Some other feedbacks or advice to give or comments? Yeah.
Okay, so you just changed the direction, but can you provide us some example for mini games, even if it's a little rough for now, but to maybe let us have a more precise idea of what kind of mini games you're aiming to have?
Yes. No, not really. We didn't think about a lot of mini games, but we want to have various mini games. For example, using the tactile, the touch input. For example, some shapes that you need to turn around and discover things. They don't really rely on challenge. I think we think we want to have some, like, the mini games should be integrated into the narrative. For example, here it's the end of a quest to get a griffin, to help a griffin. It should be this kind of mini games, but we don't have really mechanics to tell you. Sorry.
You should look at Florence.
Yes.
Very good example of touch control and narration.
Yes, thank you. We'll have a look.
Some other comments, suggestions? Yes.
Hello. Myself, I felt that it was much more better than the last time, actually. On your first presentation, you had many different objectives that it was difficult to fit everything together. And now I feel it is much more coherent, and I felt that it was good that you decided to have something that lead your project, which is a narration, and something that's gonna enrich the experience, which is a minigame. And this whole understanding, and I felt that it was better for my side.
Thank you also for this feedback. Other comments, questions? Yes, sure.
It's very common for teams who are paid a lot of money to go through exactly the same thing you're going through right now. Right? Teams struggle with this quite often, where they start in a direction and then it just isn't coming together. Now, a lot of times those projects get canceled, but sometimes they turn into something special. So what you're struggling with right now is a very important lesson. This happens at studios, not just with students. I just wanted you to know you're not alone.
Thank you for this precious feedback. So if there's no other question or comment, and you can also go see directly the teams after, we're gonna stop here, and please help me thank the Tales of Puna team. Thank you all for your attention this morning, and we're gonna go have a break for lunch, and we're gonna come back at 2:45 here just to start with the 3 other projects.